WISC TV now presents For the Record.
An update on the city's initiative to eliminate homelessness among veterans is next on For the Record. I'm Neil Heinen. Thanks for joining us. This particular initiative started in 2015, another piece to the affordable housing and homelessness challenges that Madison has been addressing in an ever more comprehensive way. The homeless veterans piece got a boost from targeted strategies, and the early returns are pretty interesting. We'll tell you what it looks like and why it works as I welcome to For the Record Madison Mayor Paul Soglin and City of Madison Grants Administrator Lynette Rhodes. Thank you both very much for joining me. So start by just talking about this initiative, what it is. I said 2015. I think that's accurate, right?
That's when we really made the commitment, and that's when we signed the city up as one of the dozens of cities that pledged to end veterans' homelessness by the end of 2017. Prior to that, we had to really cross two important hurdles. One was to establish ourselves as a city that adopted the concept of housing first, and that was really critical. Yeah. The second was I had attended a number of conferences put together by HUD, put together by the VA, and we had got reports, particularly from Phoenix, from Salt Lake City, where their initiative on Housing First, combined with a commitment to work with veterans, had been very successful. So,
you know what? Let's just take a minute and explain Housing First. We all know what we're talking about here, but it's a concept that not a lot of people understand in terms of the elements of poverty and health care and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So Housing First is an initiative that we put individuals into housing, and they don't have to have treatment right away, as in like they don't have to have their sobriety. We really focus on people who have high needs and getting them secured in housing, and then we can work on all of those other issues. Yep. To make sure that they are successful in that housing. Once they're successful, we help them with employment. We help them with all of those other kind of surrounding services.
Yep. Food, child care, all of those things. It's this whole concept that instead of addressing all of these 5, 6 other areas kind of at the same time or one at a time, you make Housing First.
You don't make them a barrier to getting into housing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So where do we go from there?
Well, we sat down, we being the staff, we decided to embrace this commitment, and from that point, our staff, Lynette, and the team she works with, got together with the folks from the VA. Obviously, they're critical, and we should explain that you've got the traditional Section 8 housing vouchers, but with veterans, you have something special, which is called a VASH voucher.
Yes. So like the mayor said, so in 2015, we really focused on, okay, what services are available for the vets? And the VASH voucher is rental subsidy, but it's also case management subsidy. So the individuals can go and rent from a private landlord, but most importantly, they bring a case manager along with them. So they're getting that intense case management as well as their rental subsidy paid for. So the landlord has a little bit of security of they can contact that case manager as they're renting to this individual once they've gotten into that housing. So the first thing, is we really need to sit down and see like what resources are available in our community. The mayor did a great job of reaching out with the vets to secure even more resources for those vouchers. So we were able to really start with a bang and getting extra vouchers for our community to really focus on getting those vets into some of the private landlords that had available units.
How do we describe the scope of this problem? I think a lot of people have gotten more and more familiar with single male homelessness, with families that are homeless, with children that are homeless. It's just kind of in the last couple of years, I think, that veteran homelessness has kind of risen up in sort of public awareness. What is the scope of the problem there?
Well, the first thing that we had to do was determine who's out there, keeping in mind that on any given day it's fluid. On any given day we may get a veteran who gets housing, who comes off the homeless list, and we may have a veteran who loses his or her housing or arrives in the community homeless. So what Lynette and the staff had to do was at that point determine how big was the job.
So we, through the Zero Initiative, we did a registry week. So we sent volunteers out, we sent staff out to make sure that we were engaging with everyone that was staying in our shelters and that were on the streets, and then did a common assessment for everybody, because that was really important as well, so we could make sure we were placing people in appropriate housing. If we knew that somebody needed to be in a permanent supportive housing, maybe with like a housing initiatives and porch light to get more case management, we wanted to do this assessment to make sure they were placed in that appropriate housing. Then if they could, go into a private landlord, making sure we made those connections. So we did this assessment, and we identified about 130 vets at that time in our community that were literally homeless. So we made that our goal. We said, in the next couple years, we wanted to place 130 vets into homelessness. In 2015 and 2016, we actually ended up placing nearly 200 homeless vets into permanent housing. So we reached our goal. We surpassed our goal of placing the homeless into housing.
I don't know about anybody else. That seems like an astounding number to me. That's a big number.
When we got to 130 as the estimated count, it looked overwhelming.
Yeah.
The fact that when we look back, that we ended up housing close to 190 vets.
Yeah.
It's amazing, but it was not a smooth ride all the way. We had some press conferences announcing the program. It was very critical that we not only get the additional VASH vouchers, which we did, but they don't do any good unless you've got a landlord who will take that veteran. Now, the VASH voucher basically assures two things. One is that the vet will not have to pay more than 30% of income as rent. And secondly, that they will get the services that Lynette described in regards to once they are housed. So at that point, we launched the program, and we went out there to find the veterans. We worked as a team with the VA, and at first it was very rocky. We didn't get as many landlords coming forth making units available that we'd hoped. We had some resistance among veterans, but the VA and the staff stayed with it, and the result is where we are today.
Well, I want to talk about where we are today, and we're going to do that when we come back right after this. I'm back with Madison Mayor Paul Soglin and City Grants Administrator Lynette Rhodes, and we are joined now by Elizabeth Morgan, who is the Homeless Program Coordinator for the Madison VA. And thank you very much for joining us, Elizabeth.
Thank you for having me.
So we're about to start talking about examples of how this is working, and we apparently there's a specific vet in particular whose story is pretty illustrative, and maybe you could start by helping us with that.
Okay. Well, within the HUD-VASH program, we've been very fortunate in that we've been able to change a lot of lives and partner with a lot of veterans to assist them in maintaining housing stability. And one veteran in particular, we have been able to partner with him on maintaining his housing now for the longest period of time he's ever been housed. And this is an individual that has had a long chronic history of housing instability due to various physical and mental health disabilities. And that case management that the program provides really has enabled him to stay out of trouble with the police department, to avoid emergency room visits. And so not only is the case management component of the program great for veterans in supporting their journey, is that it's very cost effective for society in general, and that the emergency services are down and stability is up. So it's really been a great partnership.
I mean, that strikes me as important, even if it veers towards the stereotypical that veterans probably are disproportionately dealing with mental health issues and with other health issues, rather than you know, employment, the way we define employment in this state right now, or you know, some of the other things
Well,
that can affect poverty.
certainly if they're homeless,
Yep.
they are more likely to be plagued with issues dealing with mental health and perhaps substance abuse. And that gets to one of the challenges, which is, again, going to the concept of housing first. We've got to get them housed, because dealing with these broader issues really doesn't work when they're in and out of housing, when they're on the street and don't get a supportive system. And when we opened up Rethke, where I can't recall now how many vets.
So there's 60 units in Rethke, which is a permanent supportive housing that the city built on the east side of town.
Yep.
24 of those units were specifically for vets with a HUD-VASH voucher.
Yep.
So it works because they're in the housing and we've got a supportive system there. But the job's not done. We've right now got, what, about 15 to 25 vets with VASH vouchers who can't find housing?
That's right. So right now we've identified about 50 vets that are still literally homeless. That number fluctuates. We look at the list on a weekly basis because we're looking to make sure that we're talking about literally homeless individuals. So if somebody does have a support network and they move in with friends or family, they are no longer literally homeless. So we're really focusing on who's still sleeping on the streets or in our shelters that really need our help. That's who we're prioritizing. And then also...
And are they single, typically single males, Lynette?
Mostly they are single males, yes.
But if they are single females, they qualify for the same kind of help?
Absolutely.
Families, any families at all, or is that categorized differently?
We do have families that have a vet in the household. Families usually stabilize a little bit faster than the singles. We do have other programs that offer like security deposits for vets, and the families usually are able to kind of stabilize a little bit faster with that assistance of finding a unit using that security deposit. But it's mostly right now, of the list that we're looking at, it would be all single males. We've housed all of the single women at this point that are vets on our list. So, but the number does fluctuate. So we have a goal now of 50 individuals. Like the mayor just said, about 20 of them are shopping with that HUD-VASH voucher. So we're looking for these private landlords that will kind of work with us in order to place them into a permanent housing situation. We do have some individuals, though, that for various reasons they may not qualify for VASH, that we're still also looking for alternatives to make sure that they're placed into housing as well. But individuals leave our area as well, so you know, sometimes they get removed from the list. So about 50 is what we're looking to house, though.
So landlord education is a big part of this.
Well, if we get anything out of our half hour with you this morning, if there's some landlords out there, people who know landlords, and it doesn't have to be in Madison, doesn't have to be in Dane County, does it?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the HUD-VASH program serves a 50-mile radius of the VA. So we actually have vouchers that are in the city, and then we also have vouchers down in Rockford, the Rockford area. So because that's part of the Madison VA catchment region.
And right on the edge of the WISC viewing area. But I mean, just very simply, the idea is that there are landlords out there who, if they knew of some of this resources available to them, would very much want to participate.
Yes, absolutely. And our program is very supportive of landlords, and we're willing to meet with them on a regular basis and be there to provide a bridge for any communication gaps or any knowledge gaps in terms of what our program can provide. And we are there to walk the landlord and the veteran through the entire process and support the process long-term or as long as the veteran has the voucher.
Is it just a matter of willing landlords? Do we have the stock? Do we have the stock of units available?
We do.
Okay.
You know, the city's added to its housing stock. Most of it has been middle and upper income, but there are vacancies out there. We've got a higher vacancy rate than we did 10 years ago, than we did 7 years ago. And with the support of the VA, with the support of the city, and the services that come to the veteran, this should be something that a landlord would want to embrace. As Lynette said at the beginning, we started out looking at housing maybe 130 vets.
Yeah.
We're up to over 150 now, and we've got about 20 to 25 vets with the vouchers right now that we've got to get housed. And then there's still more to do, because we've unfortunately got veterans who, for one reason or another, don't qualify for VASH vouchers, and that's another story.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about why this program is successful and how that might apply to other areas of homelessness in our city. And we'll do that in just a minute. The City of Madison is having some pretty positive results from strategic initiatives to end homelessness with veterans. And that's the topic of For the Record this morning, as my guests include Madison Mayor Paul Soglin, Lynette Rhodes, who's the grants administrator for the City of Madison, and Elizabeth Morgan, who is the homeless program coordinator for the Madison VA. And I guess I want to just reemphasize this idea of housing first and the components of it, because we've talked about it on this show before, but I still think it's hard for some people for whom shelter, emergency shelter is kind of the model for dealing with homelessness. And so the idea that these VASH vouchers, but then other supports for, as you said, Paul, I think for people who don't qualify for those vouchers.
Well, when you think about it, if you're doing emergency shelter, you are handling it on an interim basis, and you're not getting to any of the fundamental issues. With Housing First, I mean, just think about it. We started with 0 2 years ago. There are now over 150 veterans in our community who are in permanent housing, and they are getting support for any issues they may have regarding jobs, regarding employment, money management, any substance abuse issues, and that sort of thing. I mean, that's just a world of difference than an emergency shelter.
Yeah. And you had something you wanted to add on that.
Well, I think as we were kind of talking about on the commercial break, there's many different housing options in our continuum of care. And that's why we kind of did the needs assessment to make sure we were placing individuals in this appropriate housing. So Housing First is very successful when we do that needs assessment, because we're making sure that we're placing them in an arena where case management is there for them, or if they don't need the needs of high intense case management, placing them into maybe a transitional housing where they only need to stay there for 2 years to stabilize and work on a few things, but then they exit out. And that's where some of the individuals who don't qualify for HUD-VASH, they have maybe stable income. They have a stable rent history because they've stayed in some of our transitional housing programs for a couple years. They just need that opportunity for a landlord when they're going through those applications to kind of put them up a little bit higher, because we do have a tough rental market right now of who's competing to get those units.
There's two parts to this question. I'll start with you, Elizabeth, in terms of 150, 100 and however many it is right now. How close is that to eliminating veteran homelessness?
I think we're well within reach. The VASH vouchers do turn over. And so although we don't anticipate getting any more vouchers, a lot of times the program is such a success for folks that they exceed the income limits because they're able to maintain their employment, and now they're making, So we've had great successes, and they graduate from the program, and so then we're able to take in more veterans who would need the support and the stability. And we also have a continuum of care within homeless programs that not everyone needs a HUD-VASH voucher. Some folks, like Lynette was saying, maybe just need that transitional housing for a period of time so they can stabilize any medical conditions or other health conditions. And then we also have an outreach team that works very closely with the City of Madison that can offer folks placements in other maybe non-VA housing programs. And so while the VASH voucher isn't going to be the silver bullet for veteran homelessness, it certainly is makes a big impact, but we also have other programs and services.
So is there a formal waiting list for the VASH voucher?
No,
okay.
we do not keep wait lists. we work with the city in their by name list.
So then the other part of the question, Mayor, is by getting so close to solving the homeless vets problem, what kind of a dent does that make in the city's overall homelessness?
Well, we'll probably know that in about 3 more months when we get the point in
So
time survey.
last night we do what's called a point in time. So twice a year we have our service providers and volunteers go out and count how many individuals are literally homeless and in our shelters and in our transitional housing. And that gives us a snapshot of, in our community, how many homeless individuals we currently have. We have been seeing the numbers go down. We are really hoping for a dramatic decrease as they went out last night and did the count.
Last night being Wednesday, people are going to be watching this online, so
the Wednesday before.
End of January.
Yep. So we always go out the last Wednesday of January and the last Wednesday of July. We always keep the point in time count the same nights, so we have realistic and accurate data to compare year by year.
See, and when we have images of the challenges of the community. One of the images is going to be perhaps a homeless individual on State Street or around the square. We don't have images of the 150 men and women who are veterans who've been housed over the last year and a half. We don't necessarily have images of the hundreds of others who've been housed who were not veterans. And we're determined to get to this first hurdle, eliminating veterans homelessness, and then moving on, as the case may be. It's a hell of a challenge, and I just want to say, you take the work that Lynette and the staff in the Community Development Division, you take the work that's been done by the Veterans Administration. They can tell you who else has been partners on this, but it's just been an immensely successful and satisfying collaboration.
Congratulations. It's nice to have some good news about homelessness.
Yeah.
We're going to come back and wrap up For the Record right after this. Just another reminder that interested landlords can get more information at Madison VA. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week on For the Record.